We are joined now by Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, and we got a lot to get into. Appreciate you getting up early with us, Senator. First off, I'm sure you saw this, and I'm kind of curious what you think about the significance here, and I'm reading from a couple of media reports. The Trump administration told China to close its diplomatic consulate in Houston, quote, to protect American intellectual property and Americans' private information. That's according to the State Department. And that's according to Axios, where I'm reading this from right now. And also, almost immediately after that, there are reports that there is massive burning going on of paperwork inside of the Chinese consulate. Now, I'm not an expert on things, but when you're burning documents, it's typically a sign that you don't want them to be found. Is this a good move? And in terms of what it means, what's the significance of it, and how would you analyze it?
It's a big move, Clay, for sure. To order another government to close their consulate is a very big deal, and I think it is a good move by the administration to keep up the pressure on China. And yes, to your point about burning documents, you know, anytime people start burning documents, it usually means that there's some problem. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that they don't want seeing the light of day. I think it is sort of significant. It's in Houston. That's been the site of just one or two little controversies, including those involving China and the NBA. So this is a big deal. I imagine we'll be hearing more about it, but I applaud the administration here for getting tough. This is the kind of thing you have to do to get China's attention. I mean, we've seen this for decades. You tell the Chinese government, oh, don't do that, don't do this. They don't listen. You've got to show some toughness.
All right, I want to get into a bunch of different things, so I'm going to run through a series of questions. First of all, an update on what happened surrounding the NBA, the Adrian Wojnarowski letter, response to your letter, I should say. Has the NBA responded to you at all? I saw that they responded to Senator Marsha Blackburn's letter about their relationship with China. Have you heard anything from Adam Silver or anyone at the NBA so far?
Nope, crickets, 100% crickets, and ditto on ESPN on any substance. Clay, I mean, they trotted out Woj and made him apologize. But in terms of the substance of my question, how is ESPN covering the NBA's relationship with China? Is ESPN going to actually step up and ask any questions? Nothing, zero.
Are you surprised that there hasn't been a single question, at least that I've seen? They have all these media that are literally in the bubble. It's like state-sponsored media for the NBA that are inside the bubble. I haven't seen, like, James Harden wears a Blue Lives Matter mask, and 30 seconds after it trends on Twitter, he's getting barraged with questions about it. I haven't seen a single NBA reporter ask about the China situation from a single player or league executive. Have you?
No, I have not, and it is surprising to me. I mean, it does really, I think, to my mind, it raises questions about how really independent a lot of the sports media is in terms of being willing to push back on something that makes the league a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with ESPN. I mean, ESPN also profits big time. You know, Disney, of course, owns ESPN and ABC News. They profit big time on the global platform of the NBA. This is big money for them. And it just really makes you wonder, are people willing to stand up and question something that makes them so darn much money, even when it involves the kind of flagrant human rights abuses that we see in China?
Have you spoken with Adrian Wojnarowski at all? He was the reporter who responded F you when you had the gall to ask about the NBA and ESPN's complicit relationship with China.
Yeah, I've not spoken with him personally. I've never met Woj personally, and as I said at the time, and you and I talked about this, I didn't ask for an apology from him, and I don't want one. And I certainly don't want him to be canceled, to be suspended, which I guess ESPN has done. I mean, that's all a distraction. This is why I said ESPN, don't do less reporting. Do more reporting. Actually, do your job. Stand up and ask some tough questions.
Okay, another story, and I don't know if you've seen this yet. The NFL is reportedly going to follow the NBA's decision-making here, which is even more ridiculous, I think, and potentially allow helmet decals on their uniforms for victims of police violence. They previously have set the precedent, and this is lawyers talking, so we know precedents matter, but they wouldn't let Jason Witten, in the wake of the police officers who were killed in Dallas, wear a helmet decal that supported the police officers who were murdered in Dallas at the Black Lives Matter protest. What do you think about the NFL deciding to wade in not right now, at least according to reports, allowing players to support police, but allowing police victims of police misconduct to be supported by the league. Does that seem like a smart move by the NFL?
Well, I mean, it seems like it's going to land them right where the NBA is in terms of the controversy. Isn't this the same NFL, as I recall, and maybe I'm misremembering, but I seem to remember that Tim Tebow, maybe it was,
yes,
wanted to wear a Bible verse right on his face, like a decal, or maybe it was on a uniform.
It was in the yeah. It's a great point. In his eye black, Tim Tebow would pick a Bible verse, and he would scratch it in for people out there who remember, that little strips of eye black that you can put underneath your eye. And he would always write a particular Bible verse that he was a fan of before every game. And the NFL told Tim Tebow, hey, you can't have a Bible verse in your eye black anymore. And they also, again, wouldn't let Jason Witten support Dallas police officers. And now they're evidently going to decide to jump in on the side of, hey, you can label all police to be basically awful human beings.
I think if that's in fact what they're doing, Clay, this sounds to me like another example of the big corporations, NBA corporate, now NFL corporate. They're willing to do all kinds of stuff to distract from the real issues. And in this case, I'd put to Roger Goodell. In fact, I'll ask him today: is the NFL slave-free? We've launched this new hashtag, slave-free. Is the NFL profiting in any way on slave or forced labor in China or anywhere else, any country in the world, with any of their product lines, any of their material, any of the equipment the players wear? I'd like to know the answer to that, and I think it'd be a lot more relevant to social justice issues if the NFL would pledge to go slave-free than based on decals on helmets.
All right, I want to get into the legislation that you've entered in. It's fascinating. We're talking to Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. So one of the big deals, people say, well, why do you care about the NBA's relationship with China? Both they could say that to you and they could say that to me. My answer is because Chinese-United States relations, we are in a new Cold War, whether most have recognized it or not. And the question is, who is going to dominate the world in the 21st century? Is it going to be an authoritarian Chinese communist government, which is using the NBA for propaganda, or is it going to be an American capitalistic democracy? And that's a big deal. And right now, the NBA seems to be carrying water for China while ripping the United States. And so, as a part of this, you are starting to ask questions about what's going on in terms of leagues profiting. It sounds crazy, but there's still slave labor that exists around the world, and many multinational corporations are padding their profit margins by taking advantage of it while claiming that they care a great deal about social justice and human rights.
Yeah, for instance, there are widespread reports, very credible reports, that Nike, many of their product lines and components of their products, the shoes, the shirts, the jerseys, all that stuff, are made in concentration camps in China. These concentration camps full of religious minorities, one in particular called the Uyghurs. They're a religious ethnic minority that the Chinese government has put on trains, shaven, beaten, shipped into these camps. I mean, does this sound familiar? This sounds like the worst of the 20th century. China's doing it again. And Nike is using these camps to make these products and make profits. So I want to know from Nike, from the NBA, from the NFL, from all of the, and not just the sports league, all of these big multinationals, are you slave-free, or are you profiting on slave labor, foreign slave labor in your supply chain? I think that's a reasonable question. If you want to talk about social justice, let's talk about that right there, right now, and let's pledge to go slave-free.
This is crazy. So I want to dive back into this story because a lot of people haven't been paying attention to it. There was a video, a drone that got out that has received a large amount of attention. If you haven't, Google it, go look at it, of these Chinese religious minorities, these Muslims, having their heads shaved, having hoods on. They were being put onto trains. Reports are that effectively China has concentration camps for 1 million or more ethnic minority Muslim, the Uyghurs, as you said, in that country, and that these people are being used in slave labor to make gear for Nike that is then used in the NBA, the NFL, potentially other places. I mean, this is a crazy, unbelievable story that most in the media and frankly most politicians are ignoring, but it's an incredible hypocrisy that the NBA, which lectures us all day long, every day in America about our failings, may well be using products created with slave labor.
It's amazing to think that in this day and age that there is still a modern-day slave trade out there, that it is in China big time, but in other countries too, and that you still have major corporations who are consciously profiting off of it. And that needs to stop. And this is my challenge to these corporations. They want to talk about social justice in Holland. They say, oh, we're donating hundreds of millions of dollars to this charity or to that charity. Okay, fine. But what are you going to do to change your practices right now to actually quit profiting off of people who are enslaved? And I've also challenged some of these stars who endorse and have their own product line. LeBron, for instance, makes a gob of money on his product line. Okay, that's fine. But will you challenge Nike, your Nike product line? Will you say, go slave free? Will you say, I won't endorse you anymore unless you quit profiting off of slave labor? I think it's not only a fair question, I think it's a pressing question, and this is the kind of example that we need these folks to set.
Well, not only that, LeBron makes a big deal about wearing equality sneakers, right? Like literally they say equality on them. And LeBron's equality sneakers might well be being made by slave labor in China. I mean, if that's not one of the most glaring hypocrisies in the history of American sports, I can't think of one that's even more substantial. And by the way, how about this? I want to circle back around. One way we could find out about this is if media were actually asking questions. I just want to circle back around to this. How unbelievable is it that all of these media members can literally be inside the NBA bubble and they aren't asking any of these players or any of these league executives or coaches about these glaring hypocrisies? I mean, it really does make you wonder how much of the NBA media is just there as propaganda.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just an echo chamber. I mean, just a big and an entertainment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like what you have here is you've got a big gravy train that makes billions of dollars, and the NBA is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Of course, NFL even bigger, even more so. And you've got a lot of media who basically are just there. It's like covering the stars or something. You know, they're not really reporting; they're just entertaining. And my challenge would be, come on, step up and report. I mean, you got a lot of really good journalists I know who consider themselves serious journalists. So let's do some serious journalism here. Ask some of these tough questions. And let's just remember that, you know, where your bottom line is, where the money is, that's really where the priorities are. So the NBA can talk all it wants and all these other stars, but are they willing to do something that affects their bottom line? That's where we'll really find out where the priority is.
Yeah, and by the way, you have not yet gotten a response to your valid question asking for the NBA to address these hypocrisies. But since you wrote your letter, the NBA has expanded its ability for players to make political statements in addition to the uniforms, which are going to have league-approved statements on them. They now have expanded that to T-shirts as well. So players are going to be able to wear T-shirts during pregame that also make statements in addition to all of the other ones that are being made. Do you know what so far the NBA has failed to allow on any of those T-shirts? Any reference to China?
I don't know, but I'd be shocked if there was a reference to China allowed. And as you remember, with the jerseys, the customized jerseys that fans could order online, as you reported at the time, you could order all kinds of stuff online. You, the fan, could make a jersey that said "kill cops." You could make a jersey that had all kinds of stuff in it. But if you wanted to put anything critical of China, like "Free Hong Kong," no, wouldn't allow you. And finally, the NBA just canceled it. They said, "All right, that's it. We're just not going to do this anymore." That tells you something about the relationship with China, about how much money, again, is at stake here. And when push comes to shove, when it would actually be a justice cause that, again, affects their bottom line, is about modern-day slavery, about modern-day concentration camps, nobody wants to say anything.
It's a great point. And for those of you out there who didn't remember or didn't hear that segment on the show where we talked about it, you can customize your jersey on the NBA store. And you could say all sorts of awful things, F the police, kill cops, all sorts of things that are awful as your jersey name instead of your actual name, except for you couldn't say Free Hong Kong. The NBA had banned anyone from being able to go buy a jersey that said Free Hong Kong. They could say all sorts of other crazy things on the back of jerseys. Final question for you, Senator, and I appreciate you getting up early for us. Some people will say, I'm not one of them because I agree with everything that you're doing here. Oh, why is a United States Senator spending his time on this issue? your response to those people would be what?
I don't want to have my free speech and our free speech in this country compromised by an authoritarian government in China that is trying to use the outlets to shut down speech and push propaganda. Last fall, when Daryl Morey of the Rockets had the temerity to tweet a critical tweet about China and their crackdown in Hong Kong. And what did China do? They said, shut that guy up, fire him, no more talk. And they're talking about what we're seeing in the United States. This is the kind of thing that we've got to stand up to and say, you're not going to tell us what to do. You're not going to co-opt our sports teams and leagues. And reporters should think the same. They shouldn't be co-opted either. We've got to stand up and defend our values, our freedoms. And it's not too much to ask for American corporations like the NBA that they actually side with America and stand up for the things we believe in.
Amen. Good stuff, Senator. Keep up the good fight. Let us know if you ever hear back from the NBA. I'm fascinated to hear what their response is going to be.
I'll do it. Thanks for having me.